December 18th, 2022, 6:47 a.m. The overnight shift at Toronto's hospital for sick children is ending. But in the IT department, something is wrong. Very wrong. For 5 days, an invisible predator has been moving through their systems. Silent, methodical. Like cancer spreading through digital tissue, the hackers had been inside since December 13th, watching, waiting, stealing 40 gigabytes of patient data. Children's medical records, their illnesses, their treatments, their desperate parents' financial information. The ransomware doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It's already won. File by file, system by system, the hospital's digital infrastructure turns to stone, encrypted and useless. And then, on every infected screen, the same message burns bright. Your files have been locked by LockBit 3.0. Somewhere in Russia, a man monitors this attack through encrypted channels. He's orchestrated over 2,000 attacks just like this one. Boeing, SpaceX, Royal Mail, Accenture. His name, though almost no one knows it yet, is Dmitry Khoroshev. To the dark web, he's something else entirely. He's LockBit sub, the administrator, the architect, the ransom lord who built an empire on other people's misery. But sick kids, this is about to become his first mistake. Not because he cares about children, but because in the world of ransomware, even devils have a brand to protect. To understand why Children's Hospital would become a target, you have to understand the machine that Dmitry Khoroshev built. January 2020. On the Russian hacking forum XSS, a new user appears with an audacious entrance, depositing 10.5 Bitcoin, worth nearly $100,000 at the time, into the site's escrow system. No reputation, no history. Just cold, hard cryptocurrency that screams, "I'm serious." The username, LockBit. But this wasn't some newcomer testing the waters. Khoroshev had been perfecting his weapon since September 2019, when it was still called ABCD ransomware. Now, he was ready to scale. He was ready to industrialize suffering. His innovation wasn't the ransomware itself. It was the business model. Ransomware as a service. Think of it as Uber, but for digital kidnapping. Khoroshev provided the tools, the infrastructure, and the brand. The real dirty work was done by his affiliates, which numbered 188 by the time of his downfall. The split? 80% to the affiliate, 20% to Khoroshev. This was his genius, in a world where other ransom kings were taking 60% and up for themselves. Khoroshev ensured quick market adoption with a low commission strategy. By 2022, LockBit controlled 40% of all ransomware attacks globally. They weren't just criminals anymore. They were a corporation. They had customer service, yes, customer service, for their victims. They ran bug bounty programs, offering up to $1 million for improvements to their code. They even ran marketing campaigns, including one where they paid people $1,000 to tattoo the LockBit logo on their bodies. 10 people did it. But here's what those tattoos really represent. Over 2,000 organizations brought to their knees. $500 million in ransom payments. Billions more in recovery costs. Lives disrupted, businesses destroyed, critical infrastructure paralyzed. And Khoroshev. He watched it all from Russia, protected by a constitution that doesn't extradite its citizens, operating under an unspoken agreement. Don't target Russian companies, and the FSB won't come knocking. This brings us back to Toronto in December 2022. Because LockBit had rules. Unwritten codes even criminals supposedly followed. And the rules clearly stated hospitals were off limits. But one of his affiliates was about to break that rule. And in doing so, they would expose the first crack in the empire. December 18th, 2022, 11:34 p.m. Moscow time. Dmitry Khoroshev is reviewing the day's conquests. Each successful attack is a line item in his ledger. A UK manufacturer, $200,000. An American law firm, $450,000. Business as usual in his empire of extortion. Then he sees it. The hospital for sick children, Toronto, Canada. For a moment, even the ransom lord pauses. Not out of conscience. Let's be clear about that. Khoroshev had built his fortune on human misery. He'd locked cancer research data, paralyzed emergency dispatch systems, held entire city infrastructures hostage. But children's hospitals? That was bad for business. The affiliate responsible had violated the cardinal rule. You see, even in the cesspool of international cybercrime, there are lines you don't cross. Not because of morality, but because of heat, law enforcement, and media. The kind of heat that burns down empires. Back in Toronto, families were living the nightmare. Diagnostic equipment got frozen. Patient records became inaccessible. Staff had to revert to paper and pen while caring for some of Canada's sickest children. The attack had been discovered on December 18th, but the infiltration, that started earlier. Days of silent data theft before the encryption bomb went off. Khoroshev had a choice to make. Stand by his affiliate and collect his 20% cut of whatever ransom sick kids might pay. Or protect the brand he'd spent 3 years building. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, while the world celebrated, LockBit's leak site published something unprecedented. We formally apologize for the attack on sick kids and give back the decryptor for free. This is not operation of the LockBit team. But here's what the public apology didn't say. Khoroshev wasn't just giving back the decryptor. He was publicly executing one of his own soldiers. The affiliate was banned. Their share of other ransoms frozen. In the criminal underworld, this was a death sentence to their reputation. Some saw mercy. But was it true? John DiMaggio, the ransomware negotiator who dealt with LockBit directly, puts it bluntly. He told me directly that he didn't give a shit about the children's cancer unit. It was about the brand. The truth is, Khoroshev's apology revealed something critical. His empire wasn't as controlled as it appeared. 188 affiliates operating globally, each a potential loose cannon. Each capable of bringing unwanted attention. And attention was exactly what was coming. FBI headquarters, Washington, D.C., January 2023. The sick kid's apology is printed and pinned to the wall. Around it, a constellation of evidence that took 3 years to accumulate. Bank transfers, cryptocurrency wallets, forum posts, victims. 2,000 of them. The apology hadn't shown mercy, it had shown weakness. For the first time, LockBit's up had blinked. And when predators show weakness, hunters take notice. Operation Cronos was already in motion. A joint task force between the FBI, the UK's National Crime Agency, Europol, and a dozen other agencies. They'd been hunting LockBit's network for years, picking off affiliates one by one. Each arrest was a small victory, but also a breadcrumb leading to the bigger prize. Take Mikhail Vasilyev, Russian-Canadian, 33 years old, living quietly in suburban Bradford. For 2 years, investigators had been watching him. They knew he was one of LockBit's most prolific affiliates, responsible for attacks on critical infrastructure across Canada. But they needed him with his hands on the keyboard. November 9th, 2022. Evening. Police cars gathered silently outside his home. Inside, Vasilyev sat in his garage, laptop open, conducting another attack. The garage, his makeshift command center for digital warfare. They had seconds. If Vasilyev locked his computer, the encryption would be unbreakable. The police stormed in, and two officers tackled him while a specialist jammed a USB device into the laptop, capturing the RAM, the decryption keys, everything. On the still glowing screen, LockBit's control panel, victim data, proof of his crimes. Then there was Mikhail Matveev, alias Wazawaka, another LockBit affiliate. But Matveev was different. He operated from inside Russia, beyond the reach of Western law enforcement. The FBI could identify him, sanction him, even watch him driving his Bentley through Moscow streets, flaunting his ransomware wealth. But they couldn't touch him. Two Mikhails, one in custody, singing to reduce his sentence. One free in Russia, untouchable, but under surveillance. Both were pieces of a larger puzzle. Here's what made LockBit genius and vulnerable simultaneously. Khoroshev never met his affiliates face-to-face. Everything operated through encrypted channels, anonymous forums, and cryptocurrency. His affiliates knew him only as LockBit Sub, a username, a reputation, a percentage taken from their crimes. But every arrested affiliate was a potential informant. Every seized laptop contained fragments of communication. Every transaction left digital footprints. By February 2024, Operation Cronos had mapped the entire network. They knew the affiliates, the money launderers, the infrastructure providers. But LockBit Sub himself remained a ghost until they found the one thing he couldn't hide: his ego. February 20th, 2024, 11:52 a.m. GMT. Visitors to LockBit's leaked site expecting to see fresh victims instead found something else entirely. This site is now under the control of law enforcement. But they didn't just take down the site. They turned it into a weapon. Where victim data once lived, now there were press releases. Where ransom negotiations happened, now there were decryption keys, over 1,000 of them, free for victims. And then, the masterstroke, a countdown timer. Just like the one LockBit used to pressure victims. But this one was counting down to something else. May 7th, 2024, 3 p.m. Moscow time. Dmitry Yuryevich Khoroshev sits in his Voronezh apartment, watching his empire burn in real time. The FBI had just revealed his name and dissected his entire life for the world to see. 31 years old, Voronezh, Russia, father of two. The ghost had a face. For 4 years, he'd hidden behind usernames, LockBit Sub, Putin Crab, and a dozen others. He'd taunted law enforcement, believing his anonymity was absolute. Now, the US State Department was offering $10 million for information leading to his arrest. His photo plastered across international news. Khoroshev's response was immediate and predictable, denial wrapped in fury. "This isn't me," he posted frantically across Russian forums. "The FBI is trying to frame an innocent Russian." He even offered $1,000 to anyone who would contact this poor Dmitry fellow to check if he was okay, as if he wasn't talking about himself. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing cryptocurrency flowing to accounts linked to his real identity. Forum posts with linguistic patterns matching his writing style, specific Russian grammatical constructions bleeding into his English. Timestamps that aligned with his life events. The FBI had him cold. Here's the twisted irony. Khoroshev was not worried about one thing: he wasn't getting arrested. Not in Russia. The Russian constitution forbids extraditing citizens, and as long as he'd avoided targeting Russian entities, he had an unofficial protection. The FSB had bigger fish to fry, or perhaps better hackers to recruit. But being untouchable didn't mean being unaffected. The sanctions were surgical. Every international bank account frozen. Every cryptocurrency wallet identified, blacklisted. Any company doing business with him would face US penalties. He went from a multi-millionaire phantom to a prisoner in his own country overnight. His affiliates fled like rats from a sinking ship. Why trust a boss whose operational security had been shattered? Within weeks, LockBit's market share plummeted from 40% to single digits. But Khoroshev wasn't done. December 19th, 2024, he announced LockBit 4.0. New infrastructure, new code, same old promises. The ransom lord trying to resurrect his kingdom from the ashes. The response from the criminal underground: silence. Today, somewhere in Voronezh, Russia, Dmitry Khoroshev wakes up a free man who can't leave his country. A multi-millionaire who can't spend his money. A crime boss whose soldiers have abandoned him. The empire that once controlled 40% of global ransomware attacks. It's a ghost town. A handful of desperate affiliates still use his tools, attacking small businesses, local governments, the scraps that real operations won't touch. LockBit 4.0 launched to an audience that had already moved on to the next kings, Black Cat, Ransom Hub, Akira. The irony is exquisite. The man who locked thousands of victims out of their own files is now locked inside his own country. The architect of digital kidnapping has become a prisoner of geography. At the hospital for sick children in Toronto, there's a plaque few people notice. It commemorates the staff who kept critical care running during the ransomware attack. No children died, systems were restored, and life moved on. That apology, we formally apologize for the attack on sick kids. It wasn't mercy. It was the sound of an emperor realizing his generals had gone rogue. And in the world of cybercrime, control is everything. Lose it, and you lose the empire. But here's what should really terrify you. LockBit's collapse didn't end ransomware. It democratized it. Those 188 affiliates didn't retire. They scattered. They took Khoroshev's playbook, his leaked tools, his business model, and started their own operations. Smaller, nimbler, harder to track. The ransom lord is dead. Long live 1,000 princes.